Welcome to the Empowerment Hour, a podcast dedicated to the woman ready to take charge of her life, live in her purpose, and be unapologetically authentic. I am your host, Nancy Ruffin, award-winning author, mommypreneur, and the self-proclaimed Latina Oprah who is dedicated to helping women unleash their power, discover their purpose, and live up to their fullest potential. My goal is to empower you, inspire you, and help you unlock your passions and discover your purpose so that you live the most fulfilled and impassioned life. If you're ready to make a change and start living on purpose, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hey guys, thank you for joining me on another week of the Empowerment Hour podcast. It's your girl, Nancy Ruffin, and this week, I think I'm just going to freestyle it. I really don't have a topic particularly prepared for discussion, and mainly because it's like the universe has me thinking a lot lately about self-awareness, and so that was something that I wanted to talk about tonight, how self-aware we are, how we own our own shit, and the importance of taking accountability for our actions, our experiences, for the things that we do and say, and how all of those things collectively can either propel us, to the next phase of our lives. It can propel us to success. But it can also hinder us, and it can also hold us back and really prevent us from reaching our maximum potential if we're not self-aware. So I'm going to talk briefly about what that means, because we hear the term self-awareness a lot, especially for those who do personal development work, such as myself. We hear the term authenticity a lot, remaining true to yourself. And all of that really stems from how self-aware we are. So what does it mean to be self-aware? I guess in a really broad sense, self-awareness can be described as just being conscious of your own character and your feelings, and just really being in tune and aligned with who we are at our core. And really, in short, what self-awareness means, that it just means that we're paying attention, to what we're thinking, how we're thinking, what we're speaking, the words that we're projecting into the universe. We're paying attention to our actions, how we respond to certain situations. We're paying attention to how we're feeling, so we're really aligned with those emotions within, and we're really connected with ourselves. We pay attention to what, the experiences and the people that we are attracting into our lives, or that we're even attracted to, right? Understanding the types of people that we're drawn to can provide insight, as to how self-aware we are. And if we don't, or if you don't know, we have to start getting in the habit of consciously trying to pay attention to all of these different things, all of these different areas in our lives. Another example of self-awareness is paying attention to the things that we're hiding, if we're secretive people, if we're pretending to be something that we're not. It's also I guess we can also use that when looking at certain patterns in our lives and why we do certain things, and also being aware of how our body responds to certain situations or to certain things that we do. So really self-awareness is just about paying attention to everything that's happening within ourselves and around us and being conscious of that. So when you pay attention, as I mentioned, you're consciously tuning in to yourself, to the universe, to the vibrations and the energy that surrounds you. You're proactively viewing yourself from the position of your higher self. And that's just another buzzword like, authenticity and being aligned, with the source and all of those terms that we hear a lot of these self-help gurus use, and anyone that's, doing coaching or personal development. These are all terms that we use because when you're getting to know yourself, or when you're getting to reconnect with yourself, self-awareness is key. And so when your higher self observes your thoughts, your feelings, decisions, and actions, then you're forced to make a decision. But if you're not self-aware and if you're not in tune with all of these different aspects of yourself, then you're going to continue to live in the space that you're in, right? And, I think that another question for us to ask ourselves or to kind of think about is, how do we then become self-aware? How do we consciously start to think about things that we normally don't think about just because it's our nature? And I mean, for me, when I started doing a lot of my own personal development work back in 2010, I really had to sit with myself. You kind of really, and this is the only way to do it, you have to sit with yourself and really become introspective and just look at yourself, kind of step outside of yourself and then look at yourself as an outsider and try to unpack all of the things, all of the experiences, all of the situations that have led to creating the person that you are today. And a lot of that stems from our childhood. It stems from the relationships we have with the people closest to us, whether it's our parents, our caretakers, our siblings, our spouses. Well, not really our spouses, but those people who are or have been in your life from very early on. Who we become really forms, during those early years. And so once we're older, in order to really become self-aware, we have to unpack all of that stuff and all of those things that we've been carrying with ourselves. Because a lot of times, why we react to certain things, why we do certain things, why we choose the same kind of partners, why we befriend certain kinds of people, all of that stems from experiences in our childhood and what we've been taught about ourselves, about self-love, about our own worthiness, about the kind of love we feel we deserve. So in order to become self-aware, we really have to do some internal work. And a lot of times that's not really easy because it requires us to take a really long, hard, deep look at ourselves. And when we do that, it can become rather painful because for many who have maybe experienced traumatic situations or unhappy times in our lives, we tend to black out those things as a defense mechanism, right? To protect ourselves. And we don't think about that because if we allow ourselves to think about it, it's almost as if we're reopening that wound. And what we don't realize is that the only way to heal the wound is to expose it, right? It's like when you get cut, um, many times we put a band-aid on it, but usually the band-aid is to cover or to stop the bleeding, to cover the bruising. It doesn't really aid in the healing of the wound. Healing happens when it's exposed and it has the opportunity, um, to breathe, and the skin is allowed to regrow, and all of those things. So the only way we can move past our hurts and those traumatic experiences is by bringing them up and really exposing them and allowing ourselves to heal from that. And so I guess for self-awareness, it's really important to be present as the watcher of your mind, of your thoughts, and your emotions, especially as they relate to certain situations. For me, I guess for the past few months, I've been thinking about this a lot, and I am on a constant journey of self-awareness, and I'm very conscious of my faults, of where I fall short. I'm the type of person who tends to react off of emotion. So if I'm put in a certain situation and I'm feeling a certain way, my initial response to the situation is going to be based on my feelings, and I'm not the type of person who thinks first and then reacts. I react first. And sometimes in that reaction, it's not the best reaction. Sometimes I do things that may hurt others, and it's not intentional, but it's a part of who I am, and it's something that I am consciously working on, because I realize that oftentimes when I react off of emotion, it's not in my best interest, and it doesn't serve my highest self. And then in hindsight, when I have a chance to step back from the situation, and when I have a chance to really think about the alternative ways I could have responded to a situation, I tend to regret my initial response, because I know that I could have handled it differently. I know that I could have probably got the same message across, but in a different way. And so these are things that when you're self aware, you notice, you realize, because you're paying attention. For me, that's something that I still struggle with, because it's a part of who I am. And so, I work on that every single day. And I think that's why I'm probably doing the podcast today about self-awareness, and and the importance of owning your shit and taking accountability for things when you screw up and when you mess up, because that is how we grow as individuals, and it's how we really become more aligned with the God source in us. And it's really the only way we really learn. We learn from our mistakes, and we're able to change the direction of our lives when we're self-aware, because now we have the proper tools to make better decisions. When you're conscious of why you do something, then you can take a step back. And the next time you're presented with a similar situation, you can say, well, even though normally I would have reacted this way, I'm not going to do that, because when I react that way, this is what happens, right? So at that point, when you're aware, you are able to make a different choice. So if you're someone who still is not clear, as to what self-awareness is, then here are a few signs that show you may not be as self-aware as you think you are. So, for example, if you're someone who's defensive, when people call you out on stuff or when people bring things to your attention, if your initial response is to respond in a defensive way, chances are you're not really that self aware, because that defense mechanism, uh, you resort to that because you are trying to protect yourself and you're trying to rationalize your behavior. Another sign that you may not be as self aware as you think is if you're a controlling person. So, if you're someone who always has to have their way, if you're someone who finds it difficult to compromise or to hear another person's point of view, or if you're unwilling to try something, in a different way than you're accustomed to, yeah, then chances are you're not as self-aware as you might like to think that you are. Another sign is passive aggressiveness. So if you're someone who, says yes, 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 and then you turn around and do something else, yep, you got problems, honey. And again, if you're someone who makes excuses, that in itself is a sign that you're not self aware, you're not ready to take accountability for your own actions, and you're seeking to place blame on others. So self awareness really is about having a clear perception of your personality, including your strengths, your weaknesses, your thoughts, beliefs, motivation, and again, your emotions, and how you're feeling and how you respond to those emotions. Self awareness allows you to understand other people, right, and how they perceive you, and your attitude and responses to them in the moment. So we're going back to uh, being defensive, making excuses, and really being self-aware or awareness is the greatest agent for change, because until you are aware of those areas where that need improvement, or those areas where you're weak, then you're never going to be able to work on them. You're never going to be able to improve them or strengthen them, or address them. So, you can't fix the problem if you're not aware of it. Self awareness really is the first step in creating what you want and mastering your life. So, where you focus your attention, your emotions, reactions, personality, and behavior determine where you go in life. So, if you have self awareness, then that really allows you to see where your thoughts and emotions are taking you, because you're really, thinking about it, and you're not just acting off of impulse, but instead you're really getting into your thought process and into how you feel and why certain things make you feel a certain way. And if you don't want to feel that certain way, what do you have to do? What is the choice that you have to make so that you can have a different outcome and a different experience? So until you are aware in the moment of your thoughts and your emotions and your behavior, then you're really going to have difficulty making changes in the direction of your life. And for me, this is something that I have struggled with, I think, throughout my entire life, because I am, or I was, I don't know, I'm still trying to fix that part of me. I am a person who always likes to be in control. There are times when I do get defensive, but I know these things about me. And I know when I'm doing it, I know why I do it, and I work, or I'm actively working on those things. because I do want to be a better person. I want to be a better friend. Even with my husband, often he says that sometimes the way I communicate with him is a little rough. I'm not as, I don't know, thoughtful maybe, or sometimes when we disagree, I can be really strong in my opinions, and he can also, but it comes off as disrespectful sometimes, and but he says he understands who I am and why I react that way. But it's also part of my own self work that if my spouse is expressing certain things to me, then and I don't want him to feel a certain way, then I have to actively work on those parts of myself that are negatively affecting, the way we communicate. Because I don't ever want my husband to feel anything other than loved and respected by me. And I think that this goes for all of us and for you guys out there that are listening. If you're struggling with certain areas in your life, then, or with certain personality traits or character flaws or whatever we want to call them, we have to sit with ourselves and really look at that flaw and then actively, work on becoming better at it, right? Because at our core, we are who we are, but I think that we should always be in a constant state of growth, of wanting to be better, not only for ourselves, but for society as a whole, right? Because what we give out into the world is like a boomerang, right? What we give out, we get back. So you have to be conscious of the energy that you're putting out into the world and into your relationships with others. And lately, for whatever reason, I've been clashing and just, I don't know, having problems with some of my closest friends. And it's really forced me to kind of look at myself and be like, okay, well, what am I doing that is contributing to all of this kind of negative energy within my friendships, and how am I being accountable for my part in the relationship and in the energy that I'm putting into it, and this is something that I'm consciously asking myself and working towards, and I'm willing to be accountable for my own shit. I'm not perfect and no one is, and I know where I fall short, but then I can only do so much, right? I can only control myself, my own behaviors, and how I react to certain situations. I can't control how the other person is internalizing these things or how they're reacting or the energy that they're giving back to me. I can only control myself, you know. Um, so I'm not really sure how to or what to do in those types of situations. But I do know that in order for me to grow as a person, and to really get to that self-actualized, state of, that hierarchy, I have to be willing to own my shit. I have to really be able to look at myself in the mirror, masks off, the good, the bad, the ugly, and really just work on the negative stuff or my flaws. But still doing that, still knowing that even with those flaws, I'm still enough. That I'm still worthy of being loved. I'm still worthy of being respected, right? Because although we're flawed human beings, it's not an excuse for us to ever be mistreated or disrespected or made to feel less than, right? So I don't want you to think that what I'm saying is that, oh, because we're flawed, we deserve bad things or for people to treat us badly. We absolutely do not. It's just being aware consciously of our own stuff and how we project that out into the universe and onto others. Having a conscious knowledge of your own personal character and feelings is so important to your growth. And so yeah, so I really just wanted to quickly talk about self-awareness and how do we develop that kind of awareness of self, right? And really, the way you do that is through practices in focusing your attention on the details of your personality and behavior. So it's not something that you can really learn from a book. Because with a book, what you're doing is you're focusing your attention on concepts, on ideas, and it's an intellectual understanding of the ideas of self-awareness from a book, but it's not the same as gaining self-awareness knowledge about yourself, right? You're paying attention with the book, you're paying attention to the book. You're not paying attention to your own behavior, your own emotions, your own personality. So the first step is really, and what I do a lot of times, I meditate. And in my book, Live on Purpose, I have, I think it's chapter 2, but it's like a crash course on meditation, because I know that for many who've never meditated before, when they try, the experience feels so weird to them that they give up too quickly. They give up way too fast and they never get to experience the benefits of meditation because it takes practice. It's really hard to silence the mind. It's really hard to sit with yourself and clear your head because we're so accustomed to doing so many things at once. We're great multitaskers, so our minds are constantly working. Even while we're doing other things, we're thinking about what we're going to do next and what we're going to do tomorrow and what we're going to do next week. So when you take time to just slow down and sit with yourself and close your eyes, it's hard to turn off that voice inside. So it's something that you have to practice consistently. But once you master that, once you really start to meditate, there's such huge benefits in that because you really do gain more clarity on who you are and why you act the way that you do. And you really get clear on that internal voice. I can't explain it, but for me, that's what I do. I resort to meditation because it really helps to center me, So I think that when we're talking about learning to be mindful and being self-aware, that we can kind of compare that to dancing. And what I mean by that is that when we're learning to dance, we really have to pay attention to how and where our feet move, how our hands are moving, the motion of our body, what is our partner doing, right? We're paying attention to the music and to the beat and to the floor space and to any other dancers, that are next to us, right? You're aware of them because you don't want to bump into them and, all of these things. So when you're dancing, you're paying attention to all of these things. And yet dancing is something that comes naturally to us, right? So self-awareness is the same, right? Because dancing isn't learned from books. You have to actually do. You have to move your feet. You have to move your hands. You have to practice. And the same is true for self-awareness. So the same way a dancer needs awareness of their body movements, when you're practicing self-awareness, that individual has to really pay attention to their expressions of thought, of, pay attention to their emotions, to their behaviors, all of these things. So it's really something that you have to do. You can't read about it. Even me here now talking to you about this is not going to do much for you unless you go back and sit with yourself, or when you see yourself reacting a certain way to certain situations, you kind of step back and say, wait a minute, why am I doing this? All right, so you really just have to do. And it's so hard to make changes in our behavior because we are who we are, right? And we didn't get this way overnight, right? This has been years and years and years in the making. So when we want to change a behavior, it's really difficult, and it takes conscious effort to make those changes. So for tonight, I really want you to think about your own self-awareness and how self-aware are you really? And if you're not self-aware, how is that impacting where you are in your life right now? How is it impacting how successful you are, or what you've been able to achieve and accomplish? Has it been a hindrance to you? And if you were more self-aware, how much more successful could you be if you were really conscious of your shortcomings, your flaws, of your certain personality traits that are not in your best interest, those things that you do that maybe get you into trouble sometimes, right? Identify those behaviors and then think about how you can start to work on that so that you can get past it and really tap into your fullest potential. So that's pretty much it for tonight, guys. It's just something I've been thinking about because I've been going through, my own personal stuff. And the point of this podcast really is to share my own journey, to share my own experiences, and hopefully we grow together because of it. I'm a constant work in progress, So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for being my audience, for continuously inspiring me and motivating me to do better, to be more, to give more. And I really would love to hear from you guys about this topic in particular. And if this discussion has helped you at all, so please, once you take some time to think about that, shoot me a DM, shoot me an email, and let's talk. Let's talk about it. And if you have any questions or topics you want me to address on our next episode, then feel free to send them to me and I will talk about it. But until next time, my loves, go out there, be productive, do your best, and crush some goals.